Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise here today as a member for Bennelong and also a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Trade and Investment Growth to talk about this significant free trade agreement that is incredibly important for our nation. I'll also confess, Deputy Speaker, that I stand here as a former citizen of the European Union and a former French citizen, and to be part of a parliament that is prioritising the finalisation of this trade agreement is something I never thought would happen, but I think is something to be really excited about. To finalise this agreement, to open up free trade between Australia and the EU is something incredibly important. We've heard here today that the current free trade agreement, or the trade agreement between both our continents, is outdated, needs to be updated, and thank goodness that we've had a change of government so that we can continue on with the progress. Because you'll notice that those opposite earlier, I mean, they're not here now, I'm not pointing to you, honourable members, those opposite earlier were talking about, Deputy Speaker, their record on free trade agreements, but they didn't mention the two huge elephants in the room in regards to the EU trade agreement, and that was, of course, their terrible and failed climate policy and, of course, the disrespect of the Prime Minister to one of our biggest trading partners, one of the biggest trading partners in Europe, being France. You wonder why New Zealand signed their free trade agreement with ours, because they had a better climate policy than we did. Our free trade agreement with the European Union stalled because of 10 years of division and delay on climate chaos. And I'll just read you a quote here, Deputy Speaker. This is from the former European Union Ambassador, Dr. Pulch, and I quote this from him. "In Europe, every agreement, whether it is political or economic or trade, needs to be a net plus on climate change. That would have been a bit of a challenge with the climate change policy that was in place beforehand. Now we have a new government with a more ambitious climate policy, and that helps us enormously." I'll stress that point, Deputy Speaker. Without this change of government, this free trade agreement would have stalled, and it did stall. It would not have progressed. We have a new government that has set climate targets, and the doors are now open to Europe once again. They've gained significant momentum, and we saw very early on our new Prime Minister go and visit the French President to start to repair relationships there, to reset relationship. And what a breath of fresh air that was, Deputy Speaker. We can now partner with our European parliaments and colleagues over there, particularly to help our neighbours here in the Pacific on climate change. The technology that the Europeans have in dealing with climate change and emissions is something that we should be a part of and that we should share with our European colleagues. We have an unwavering commitment to this free trade agreement. I know it's something that my colleague, the member for Hasluck, and I talk about often in our role on the committee. It's something that, as a former European myself, I am very, very interested in, because we know that the EU is one of Australia's largest trading partner. We know that enhanced links with Europe will help us here in our own region in terms of in the Pacific, but also in terms of energy security, and it will facilitate huge investment in renewable energy here in Australia, but also sustainable critical minerals supply across the world. Here in Australia, we dig up every mineral you need to make solar panels, to make batteries, and then, of course, we've heard from some members here today the significant improvements we need to make in agriculture to be able to unlock the European market there. It gives me great pleasure that the government has changed so that we can continue on and move this free trade agreement along. I'm hopeful that it can conclude very soon, but I can tell you, if it weren't for that change of government, this free trade agreement would have got nowhere.